Okay, so as I was saying, estrous cycle is a series of physiological, physical, and behavioral events that accumulate into ovulation. So the main target of the estrous cycle is to achieve ovulation. And ovulation simply means producing the female gamete, which is the ovum. And the ultimate aim is for reproduction. So the cycle represents cyclical pattern of ovarian activities, which mostly occurs in most mammals. This facilitates the female animals to go from a period of reproductive receptivity to non-receptivity, ultimately allowing the establishment of pregnancy. So the whole aim of the cycle is to establish pregnancy. The normal duration of estrous cycle in cattle is a range from 18 to 24 days. However, we have an average of 21 days of the cycle. Okay, so the gonads in the female animal is referred to as the ovaries, and the ovary is the target organ in cow's reproductive tract. It has two main functions: production of the egg, which is referred to as the ovum, and then production of hormones. The principal hormones produced by the ovaries are estradiol or estrogens, and then progesterone. On the surface of the ovary, there are two main functional structures. The first one is the follicle, which is shown on the picture on the right hand side, pointed out by the arrow. And then the other functional structure is the corpus luteum, which is also referred to as the yellow body. Okay, so these are the main functional structures, and as I mentioned, they produce the hormones. So the follicle, the matured follicle, produces the estrogen. This is the matured follicle, while the corpus luteum produces progesterone. We'll see the function of each of these hormones as we progress. Right, so the cycle comprises a series of events as mentioned earlier. So where it all begins is in the primordial germ cells, which are found on the germinal epithelium of the ovaries. Under the influence of a hormone called the gonadotropins, they multiply to form primary follicles, which progresses to secondary follicles before they become the antral follicle, which are referred to as the tertiary follicle. All this multiplication occurs under the influence of a gonadotropic hormone, which is called FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. As the name implies, it is responsible for the development of the follicles from the primordial follicles to the tertiary follicle. And this tertiary follicle will mature into the fully matured follicle referred to as the Graafian follicle or the antral follicle, which houses the egg. Apart from the egg, it also contains granulosa cells and the theca cells. The granulosa cell has the main function of producing estradiol, which now makes the animal behave in a receptive manner. We'll see those behaviors later on. So after a fully grown follicle, which is referred to as the antral follicle, it will eventually ovulate. The process of release of the ovum is referred to as ovulation. And this event occurs under the influence of the luteinizing hormone, LH. Okay. Then from the remnants of the antral follicle will now be converted into the yellow body, which is referred to as the corpus luteum. You can see it has a yellow color. The yellow color, the yellow color is as a result of the production of what you call um, lutein cells. The lutein cells are responsible for secretion of progesterone. As we have mentioned earlier, granulosa cells produce what? Estradiol or estrogens, while the lutein cells in the yellow body produce what we call progesterone. And then finally, after a few days, this corpus luteum will be destroyed, and the remnant of the corpus luteum is referred to as the corpus albicans. So these are the series of events that occur every 21 days, so long as the animal is not pregnant or is not having any pathological problem. These are a series of hormonal interactions that might be too busy for you, but I'll just try to summarize it as quick as possible. The estrous cycle is divided into two main phases, the luteal phase and the follicular phase. So it all begins from ovulation. When the animal ovulates, it releases an egg, and the remnant of the graphian follicle is now converted into corpus luteum. You can see from the small yellow body to a larger one. So by the the 3 to 4 after ovulation, the corpus luteum becomes functional and it secretes a hormone called progesterone. And then after some few days, lasting from 5 days to about 18 days, the corpus luteum is destroyed. Once it is destroyed by release of prostaglandin from the uterus, it will now allow for development of new follicles. But these follicles will not ovulate one time. So they undergo what you call uh, follicular dynamics. From recruitment, recruitment means growing the cells from the primordial germ cells to primary follicles. Then after they grow to tertiary follicle, there will be selection, and then there will be dominance. The dominant cells are expected to ovulate, but with the absence of sufficient LH, there will be no ovulation, and then they will die off by a natural process called apoptosis. And then a new follicular waves will begin from selection, from recruitment to selection to dominance. That's how it occurs every time. And then when there is sufficient LH from the pituitary gland, then there will be ovulation. Okay, maybe this might not be very clear, but I'll break it down to explain it with the influence of the different hormones. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. Recruitment from the primordial germ cells to primary follicles to secondary follicles and tertiary follicles. If there is enough LH, it will cause ovulation, but in the absence of sufficient LH surge, which depends on the diameter of the follicle, it will not regress or it will die off. What in a process that is called apoptosis, and this will now lead to generation of another follicular wave. So most cattle will have 2 to 4 follicular waves before ovulation occurs. Okay. Then I'll discuss the role of each of these hormones in the estrous cycle. Okay, so the estrus cycle, as I said, is an average of 21 days. So starting from the first one, which we call estrus, the animal will exhibit some signs, and then it will release the egg. The estrus itself lasts usually not more than 24 hours. So from there will be met-estrus. During met-estrus, the corpus luteum is formed, but it's not functional. So it lasts from 1 to 4 days. After 4 days, the corpus luteum becomes matured. Then we'll enter what we call diestrus. Diestrus is from the 15 to 17. In some animals, it is 17 days, while in others, it is 18 days. Okay? So from 18 days throughout this period, the corpus luteum is maintained and it continually secretes progesterone. The function of progesterone is to block uh, secretion of gonadotropins, which causes follicular growth. But at the end of diestrus, that corpus luteum is destroyed by prostaglandin secreted by the endometrium. And then the animal begins proestrus from the 18, 19, 20, 21, about 3 days interval, when the follicles will grow from primary follicles to tertiary follicles until dominance occur. When you have a matured follicle, then the animal enters estrus and it releases the egg and the cycle continues that way. So every 21 days, this series of events occur. And hence, the estrus cycle is divided into two main phases: follicular phase, which is proestrus and estrus, and then luteal phase, which is met-estrus and diestrus. So what are the signs of estrus? The primary sign of estrus is that the female stands to be mounted by another animal. So it could be male or female. Whichever the sex is trying to mount it, it will stand. And this is what we will call standing heat. So in this picture, the black cow is in standing estrus, as shown by the red arrow. This is the primary sign of heat. Any other sign is considered to be secondary, and it's an indication of the fertile period of the cow. So you need to breed it at this time. There are other signs of estrus that are referred to as secondary signs. So sign number one is that the cows will mount other cows. In this picture, the one on top, the one that is mounting is showing is mounting this one. So this particular cow is in standing heat, while this one is most likely in proestrus. So remember, only cows that are standing to be mounted are in actual heat. Cows that ride may or may not be in heat. So they are mostly in proestrus, about to be in estrus. Other signs include friendliness. Cows in heat show the following signs. They follow other cows, or even the owner. If you are around, they'll be following you. They will stand behind each other. They'll put their heads on the backs of other animals, and then sometimes they will sniff, nuzzle, or lick each other. So all these are behavioral signs. Mostly that is caused by the presence of estradiol in the animal. Other signs are restlessness and nervousness. The cows become nervous, bawl about, they show signs of restlessness, walk in search of for a bull, as well as okay, as well as they walk in search of for a bull and then pace around the fence of the farm. So general nervousness and restlessness is typical of an animal in distress. Also, we'll see clear mucus discharge from the vagina. This is initially mucoid. This is the color of egg white. Initially, it is cloudy. Then later on, it becomes mucoid. Okay. Later on, it becomes mucoid. So this is what you see in an animal that is in estrus. Okay, as shown in the picture here, you can see a stringy, clear discharge, typical of the estrus stage. However, I told you that all these signs are not primary signs. They are only suggestive signs. Okay. Also, the vulva becomes edematous. This animal has a dark skin around the vulva, so you cannot see the reddening of the vulva. But it becomes edematous and it is wrinkled. You can see the wrinkling nature of the vulvar lips. So these are still all under the influence of estrogen. So after the heat period has passed, usually there are some other signs you see. Presence of uh, bloody discharge, and then this occurs about a day after the passage of estrus itself. So for you to detect it, there's no substitute for observation. You should observe the animals for at least 30 minutes twice in a day. In animals that are confined in the house, you need to give to improve heat detection, you need to observe them at least 3 to 6 times for detecting animals that are in heat. Provide good footing for the cows so that they'll be able to mount each other. If the floor is not rough, if it is slippery, then the cows will be afraid to mount each other, and that will now give you a false observation that they are not on heat. You should also take care of the hoofs. If the animal is suffering from hoof problems such as foot rot or laminitis, then they will not also allow for mounting, as well as they will not mount other cows. So this will give you a false indication that they are not on heat. For smaller group of animals, you should place a dry cow with the cows that are suspected to be in heat. The animal that is the dry cows will be aggressive mounters, so they will mount them, and this will indicate to you that they are on heat. There's a pattern in cows or in heifers, so you should watch them in restricted area for at least twice a day. But the recommended should be, the more you observe them, the more you find out that they are on heat. So more observation is required. Studies have shown that 28.6% of all breedings are associated with cows being on standing heat for 2 consecutive times. So if you don't check more than 1 time, you're likely going to miss the heat. So what is the best time to bring your animal for insemination? When usually ovulation, the animal begins standing heat, you will now give it between 6 to 18 hours, an average of 12 hours before you now inseminate, because it is expected that at the end of standing heat, the animal will ovulate. Okay, so we need to inseminate before the animal ovulates so that we meet the optimum viability of the egg. The egg usually is very viable for 8 hours, while the spermatozoa is viable for 24 hours. So the optimal time to breed is 6 to 18 hours after the onset of standing heat, with an average of 12 hours. This is where we get the idea of the AM PM rule, which states that an animal that shows standing heat in the morning, that's AM, should be inseminated in the evening, that's PM. And then a cow that shows standing heat in the evening, that's PM, should be inseminated in the morning, that's AM. So that's the golden rule for insemination. Okay, but we face a lot of challenges with regards to heat detection in Nigeria. Um, Insemination at other times in the cycle results in lower conception rates. So you need to meet the right time for insemination. Poor heat detection leads to long service intervals, increased calving conception intervals, and long calving intervals. Because as a farmer, you need your cow to deliver one calf per year. So each cow should be able to give you one calf per year. But if you are not able to detect heat, then that will be a problem and a financial loss to the farmer. The major problem we face in the field is most of our Zebu cattle, particularly the white Fulani and the Bokolo, about 40 to 50% of them show what we call silent heat. They do not show obvious signs of heat. Accurate heat detection is very difficult in Zebu cows. This could be due to short and variable duration of estrus. So instead of the heat to last between 6 to 12 hours, it will now last only 1 to 3 hours. This is very common in white Fulani cows, particularly in field situations. Then they also exhibit weak signs of estrus. Instead of you to see clear mounting and all those discharge and edematous vulva, most of them will not show these clear signs, and that's a problem. Also, instead of them to mount several times in 1 hour, maybe most of them will mount 1 to 2 times in 1 hour. So the observation becomes difficult. So twice a day observation may not be feasible for our local breeds. Also, heat activity is greatest at night hours. So when you go to sleep, maybe around 12 midnight to 6 a.m. is when they will be exhibiting the clear signs of estrus, which will now lead you to miss the actual signs of estrus. So that's why we need to use some aids for heat detection. The commonest ones around the world include the heat watch system, pedometer, chin ball marker, vasectomized bulls, camera heat detector, the tail painting method, records, computerized systems, milk progesterone detection. For milk progesterone detection, when you take the milk and you measure the quantity of progesterone, when it is low, you know that the animal is in estrus. So instead of having a high progesterone, they will have low progesterone and high estrogen. So I'll show you some pictures of these heat detection aids. This is where you apply them. So you can have those applied on the neck region, such as the collar system. Then you have the pedometers, which are applied on the legs. These two are for detecting of movement activity. I told you that signs of estrus involve restlessness and moving in different areas of the pen or house. So these pedometers will detect the number of movements and they'll send it to a computer system, which will bring it back and tell you it will calculate the probability of the animal being on actual estrus. There are others that measure body temperature, vaginal temperature, pressure sensors around the tail, so that when there's another animal that is mounting, to be able to record and send signals. Or even in milk, when you detect progesterone levels that are too low, then you are likely that the animal is in estrus. So I'll show you a few of them. This is the tail paint system, which is very, very practicable in the field. You apply chain, and then when the other cows mount it, they will disperse the paint around in a pattern so that you know that this animal has been mounted by other animals. The camera system is common. It has been used by Napri and other places. This is a heat patch detector. When you apply the patch on the rump of the animal, if it has been mounted, the dye that is inside the patch will now disperse, and you see the color changing from white to red, indicating that the animal has been mounted. Next, we have the timbal marker, which depends on the principle that the animal becomes friendly and rests its chin on other animals. So once there's chin resting, it will mark with a color. The color is indicative that that animal has allowed for chin resting and probably she's on heat. So it's mostly used for detecting heat based on the chin resting technique. Then we have the pedometer or the neck collars. This device is used along with the computer to determine how far an animal has walked because of the restlessness. And then the computer will calculate the probability that the animal is in standing heat. And once it reaches that probability, it will give you a signal in the computer. And then the tag number for each animal is already computerized. So it will tell you which animal is on heat, and then you go and inseminate. Then we have the Moo heat detector as well. It serves two purposes. It tells you that the animal is on heat and it has been mounted by other cows. And then the Moo is also important when the animal is about to calve. So during calving, it sends you signal as a veterinarian or as a farm owner that the animal is about to calve. So it serves two purposes. So most of these are very expensive, and the most practicable one is the tail painting technique, or the Kamar. Kamar is relatively cheaper, but the cheapest amongst them and the most effective in field situation is the tail painting technique. Okay, so some recommendation by Mai et al. In 2002. They said for field situation, the most practicable heat detection technique is the tail painting and the Kamar heat mount detector, as well as the chimbal mating device in Bunaji cows, which usually exhibit silent estrus. Kamar and chimbal devices are expensive for field condition. Therefore, they recommended that if you are doing estrus synchronization in Fulani herds, then you should use the tail paint method. All right, so that's the end of the first half of our discussion. We'll now take a break. We'll have the class divided into groups. We're going to have a breakout session. I'm going to divide the class into 3 groups with 10 to 11 participants, and then if people will discuss an aspect that require more explanation, or um, when you have questions or observations to make, then you jot them down and assign a group leader for him to bring out those things. So in 3, 2, 1, I'll divide you into these sessions. So make sure you discuss amongst yourself. I'll give you like 5 minutes, or let's make it 10 minutes. I'll give you 10 minutes to discuss amongst yourself and bring out areas that you need more clarification or questions that you might have. Then you jot it down in a piece of paper, and each group will have one person to represent the group, and I'll give you some minutes to tell me about your decisions. Thank you. The breakout session will end in about 1 minute. So the breakout session will end in about 1 minute. So make sure you're concluding now. Um, oh, thank you very much. You might join back the meeting. Okay, so we'd like to have one representative from each group tell us what they decided.